What is MCP? So imagine a universal remote control which can be used on all the devices, or which can operate on all the devices, for example TV, speaker, or even the lights. So you have a universal remote. MCP is something like that. It's like a universal adapter that lets AI model to connect to any system using a protocol. Okay, so instead of building custom connection to every data source, you create a MCP server, so like a plug and play interface. Okay, so here you can see there is a MCP client with MCP host, and there are multiple MCP servers. So each application is exposed as an MCP server. So internally it can connect to any number of data source, and it can fetch the information from that, but it is exposed as one MCP server to the client. Okay, so for example here there it is a multi server system. So it's like there are 3 MCP server, and each MCP server can connect to multiple data sources. Okay, so next question is, why do we need MCP when we already have agents? So imagine in an enterprise scenario, imagine we have two different applications. For example, we can consider like team A is working on one application and team B is working on another application. So application A creates an agent that performs certain tasks, and the application B has to use those agents. So what does the application B does? It calls the methods, or it imports the methods, and it use the classes or methods, and it will use those in its client system, right? So in that case, for example, team A changes the implementation, renames the method, or changes how the agent is accessed, then what happens is team B's code breaks, or they have to do corresponding changes. So we can resolve this issue with MCP. So imagine MCP like team A wraps their agent in an MCP server which is exposed via standard protocols, and they provide a JSON config which will tell us every detail about that MCP server, like the tools, or like how to access the server, what protocol needs to be used, and everything. So then we can use this JSON file and access the MCP server. Okay, so what are the components of MCP? It's like MCP host, MCP client, MCP server, and MCP protocol. Host is nothing but where your server is hosted, like for example IDE, like a VS Code or Tray IDE, or your cloud desktop. So these will be considered as host. And MCP client is a class or a code. It's just like a Python file which is communicating with the MCP server. Okay, and what is an MCP server? MCP server is also a Python file which performs certain tasks, like it connects to database, or it calls some web API, or you have some your own logic to handle certain things. So you write separate tools for each task that needs to be performed. For example, Google Maps could build an MCP server where they expose various agents and tools for location based tasks like search, routing, geocoding. So they have multiple tools for that. So that is what is MCP server. Okay, I'll explain MCP server in detail also. For now, let's see what is MCP protocol. Defines what information to send. Okay, so we have two kind of protocol, STDIO and HTTP, or HTTP streamable, SSE. So I'll explain all of them in detail. So let's come to MCP server. Let me show the server that is created over here. So this okay, before creating MCP server we need to have UV installed. You can do pip install UV. So it's like a package manager. So if you want to check if UV is installed, you can do UV minus version. So you can see that UV is already installed in my system. So next we're gonna create the MCP server here. So for this I'm using fast MCP library to do this. So I will explain the entire code over here. So here this server will get the weather condition for a city. Okay, so I have a method get underscore weather. This method will use API key, weather API key, which I have separately created in weatherapi.com. So I have my weather API key, and this MCP server, if invoked, it will give the weather condition for a specific city that you are passing in. Okay, so for that I'm creating the MCP server, fast MCP. So my server name is weather MCP. Okay, so I'm creating an instance of that here. So this is my tool. When we talk about LangChain agents, so we talked about how we create tools, like the functions or methods are exposed as tools, right? So LLM will decide which tool to call based on user input. Similarly, in MCP we have all the functions which is declared as tools. So here this is the decorator at the rate mcp.tool. So if you have this decorator, then it means that the method under that is a tool for the MCP server. Okay, so also we need like API key for weather, which will go and get the weather condition for a specific city. So we are constructing a URL with the API key and the city and everything. So I have my API keys in my .env file. So yeah, so this is how and we are creating a request request.get. So this is an API, so I'm using get method to get the response. So once I get the response, I'm extracting the city, country, temperature and the condition. So along with that, so let me tell you something more about MCP server. So as I told you, it's similar to the LangChain tools, where you have method declare as tools and LLM and decide which tool to call based on the user question. Okay, so let's see how to run this particular server file. So I can even just do uv run main.py. okay, like this is like normally how you run your Python code. So this will say MCP server is running and waiting for connection, because this is the print statement I'm giving it over here. So now once I run my main file, my MCP server is started. Okay, so it is waiting for a request from the client. So here as I told you, the protocols I've used STDIO. So it's like a transport protocol. STDIO is like a standard input output protocol. Okay, so when you are running your server locally, then STDIO should be fine. So this is mostly used when you are making server available locally for local communication, like a Cloud Desktop, like MCP client, like Cloud Desktop is talking to your local MCP server. Okay, then you use the STDIO protocol, and I have a separate code for HTTP as well. I'll talk about that when we gonna execute HTTP server. So for now, this is STDIO is like standard input output protocol, mainly used for running the servers locally. So my MCP server is started and it is waiting for the connection. So what do we need next is MCP client. So let's go to our MCP client. So this is a very simple method which just invokes the MCP server and it will get the weather details. Okay, so I just have one main method here. So it is getting the it knows where the MCP server is. It's nothing but main.py. So it will get the list of tools, and with that tool it will call the tool get weather. So as I showed you in my main method, we have only one tool here, right? Get weather is the tool. So along with tool we can have resources, we can have prompts and everything. First let's clearly understand the basics of MCP, that is tools. Okay, so this tools, so when I go to my MCP client, so it is invoking this tool get underscore weather, and what is the argument for the tool? City. So you need to pass the name of the city and you will get the weather details of that. As of now I'm here, I'm sending the weather as so let's check the weather for California. Okay, so how do we execute this code? So also we have used like a asynchronous here because I want to use await, which will wait for the server to hit the server and get the details. So yeah, that is what it is. And we are doing just asyncio dot run. Okay, so we are running the main method which will call the MCP. So let's take another terminal, okay, where my MCP client will be run. Okay, so what we are gonna do, uv run MCP client.py. so this file will invoke my server, right? Yeah, so this what happened now, my MCP server is running in one terminal, you can see here, and my MCP client, so it's all in local for now. Okay, so it is invoking the MCP method and it is passing the city as California, and we are getting the result here like temperature 18.2, condition is sunny. So this is a real-time weather update, okay, where from the weatherapi.com. Okay, so this is one way of invoking MCP server. Okay, so what do we do next? Next is, for example, other than having our own built-in or custom MCP servers, what we just did is our own custom MCP server, right? So we are returning how the weather has to be displayed, like city, country, temperature and condition. So this is our custom code which will gives me the weather update. So there are some of the MCP servers which is already built and available in the marketplace. As I told you, there are already MCP servers for different applications which are available in the marketplace. So you can just check this GitHub link for model context protocol. So this has a list of all the servers here, third-party servers. Okay, there is MCP server for Adfin, AgentOps, and this is and we have MCP servers for Airbnb, Amazon, AWS. So there are a lot of MCP servers which are already available in the market. Airbnb, so this is the MCP servers. If I open this, this will show, give me a JSON a tag where it will show how to invoke this MCP server and how to use this in my application. Okay, let's try to use Airbnb MCP server. Okay, the JSON part for the Airbnb server. So let's add it in our, I'll show you how I have done it. I have my mcp.json file over here. So I just copied the instance of Airbnb server into my JSON file. Okay, so now my JSON file, my Airbnb server is available for me to access. Okay, so here let's try to understand how this what is there in this JSON file. So we have the list of MCP servers. So inside this flower bracket, whatever you add will be each one will be different MCP server. Here this is the Airbnb MCP server, this is the weather MCP server. Like that you can add multiple MCP servers here. Okay, so for me I am using Airbnb. So the command is npx, that is nothing but how this Airbnb server will be executed, like the file will be executed. In my case, you can see here, when I was running my server, the weather API server, I was doing uv run main.py, right? So this is the exact command and arguments I'm giving it in my JSON file. So similarly, Airbnb has a way to invoke their MCP server. So that is nothing but npx. For npx to work, you need to have Node.js installed in your machine. So you have to just download it and install. So then your npx command will work. So I'm just doing npx, and whatever is there in the Airbnb MCP server marketplace, the JSON, I have just added that into my code over here. Okay, so now I have a client. This client will invoke the Airbnb MCP server, not my custom MCP server, but the Airbnb MCP server. Okay, so let's see what is there inside my client code. So I'm loading the JSON file. Okay, whatever is here, I'm loading it, and I'm getting the config information. From that, I am creating a client. Okay, I'm creating a client. Here you can see I'm calling Airbnb search. So the entire Airbnb server has many tools inside it. Okay, so if you can, I have the list of tools as well. I'll show you once I execute this code. So I am using Airbnb search tool. So what are the arguments? Location, check-in, check-out, and number of adults. Okay, so I'm passing these arguments here. So I'm getting the search results. So let's see how to invoke this. So I'm just running this code normally, like uv run mcp client with json.py. So that's the file name. Once I run this code, so it will read the MCP configuration and it is giving me the output. So here I can show you the tools. So tool 1 is the name, exactly I have copied it from here, and tool 2 is listing details. Okay, so we are doing search here. So what is my output that I got is the Airbnb in Paris, France. Okay, so so these are some of the details of the whatever the Airbnb listings they have. Okay, so this is how we invoke MCP server from marketplace. So we have learned two things. One is custom MCP server, where we invoked the weather MCP and we got the weather information. Next is MCP from marketplace, that is nothing but Airbnb server, where we got the listings for Paris. So something like this, check-in, check-out date I have given. So okay, so this is the next step that we have done. What is the third way of using MCP server? Okay, so you need not write an entire client code to use this MCP server. there is a way which MCP host will give you option to access your MCP server. Okay, what is MCP host? Here it can be your cloud desktop or your Tray IDE. So I'm showing you in Tray IDE. Here I can configure my MCP server inside Tray. So this is how we have to do. So go to Tray settings, MCP, click on add. So it will add a MCP server here. So adding the, I can directly add from the marketplace, or you can even add it like this. So let's add from our JSON file. So let's copy this one and okay, inside this we are gonna put our Airbnb MCP server. Okay, so say confirm. So my Airbnb MCP server is added. Like this you can add n number of MCP servers into a Tray client. Okay, so the host here. So I can invoke this MCP server with a in my chat window. Like for example, let's see, like the weather MCP server that I can invoke. So this is my Tray IDE, this is my Tray assistant. We'll invoke the MCP server here. So I have copy pasted this, how is the weather in Los Angeles. So if I send this command, since I have a trial version of Tray IDE, so it is waiting for the queue. I'll show you the one I have already executed. So here you can see, if I give the how is the weather in Los Angeles, then it will invoke my MCP server, that is get_weather, and it is giving the result, right? So till now what we learned, creation of MCP server, and we wrote a client code which will invoke the MCP server, and also we saw how to configure MCP server in the Tray IDE and how to invoke the MCP server in the Tray assistant. Yeah, so let's see how to invoke MCP inspector. You can do MCP dev is the command, main.py, my file which has my MCP server, right? So if I do this and enter, a web page for me, localhost. So see, this is the web page. Since my code was in stdio, I'm selecting transport type as that. So it is similar to whatever we saw in JSON, right? So the command is uv, the argument is mcp run main.py. okay, so if I have any environmental variables, I can set it up here, but my code is actually picking my environmental variable from .env file. So let me connect. So this is my MCP server is connected here. So tools, what tools I have get weather, right? So let me select that tool and let me give weather for Bangalore. So it will run the tool. So this is what it is. Okay, so this is a way to test our MCP server using MCP inspector. Okay, so next method is, so we saw I initially when I started, I told you MCP server can be created in two ways. One is stdio and one is HTTPS. Stdio will give us a local server instance which can be helpful for running the server locally. So we have MCP server transport HTTP also. Okay, so let's see what it is now. HTTP can be used for remote access of the server. So when you want to access your server remotely, so we can use HTTP, or streamable HTTP is like server sends chunks of data. Okay, so I have created a code here, MCP server using HTTP streamable, okay, streamable HTTP. So it's the entire code is same exactly as we saw the main.py. Only thing I have changed is transport is streamable HTTP, and while creating the MCP server I'm giving the host and the port. Okay, so this is what the host and the port I'm giving. So let's see how to spin the MCP server with HTTP transport. So here first I need to run the server in one terminal, so I'm using UV run. So my server is started and it is running in the IP address over here. This is the command, npx command, to invoke the inspector. Once we execute this command, the MCP inspector will spin up and we can test our server there. Let's see how to do that. Inspector. So here I have to make sure transport type is streamable HTTP. This is the URL. It should be same that we used in our code, and connection type is via proxy, and I am connecting it. Okay, so here if I go and do list tools, so again I have the get weather. So similarly I am getting the weather for California. So this is the output. So yeah, this is all about the MCP server. So what all we learned? To wrap up, we learned how to create MCP server. We learned how to invoke MCP server in different methods. One is writing a Python code, another is using the tray assistant here. So the tray assistant, the other one is using MCP inspector. So those are the three ways how you can test your MCP server. And also we saw the difference between HTTP and STDIO transports for MCP. Okay, so that's all for today. Thank you.